Hello and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people who do incredible things. Hi, I don't have an introduction prepared because I've been too engaged in our guest with conversation prior to this episode starting. Hi, I'm Trey, and I am joined by my co-host Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi, I'm also Trey. No, I'm not.
No, but
What?
no, please keep going.
No, we've just been laughing so much before the show that we couldn't keep it under control, and then we had to start. So that's where we're at. So I'm just gonna get right to it then, if you're good with that.
Oh, please, yeah, go for it.
Romanticism takes many forms, and today we get to delve into the dark and stormy night version of romanticism, which I love. So today's guest is Jennifer Ann Gordon, who is an author. She's multi-talented. She's an author. She's a podcaster. She does all kinds of things. We're going to let her talk about it. And she hates Beatles. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Hi, I really wanted to introduce myself as also being Trey, but
I'm sorry.
I just feel like
It could have been the trifecta.
a trifecta.
Let's just start over. Trey, go.
Hi, I'm Trey.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm also Trey.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I'm also Trey. Welcome to our trifecta. Thank you both so much for actually, having me on the show. I fell in love just with the title when I saw Modern Romantic. I was like, oh, do they know I'm not a romance author? And then I looked at what your show actually was, and I was like, oh, I got like all these pre-Raphaelite vibes.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about like death and flowers and poems and, And so you better live up to that. Death, flower poems. And Beatles.
Trey has several flower poems ready to go.
But no pressure.
Which Trey?
Ooh, but which Trey?
Oh, gosh. Oh, yikesies. Yes, thank you so much for having me. Jennifer Ann Gordon is my real name. My real name. It is my real name. Because, why would you call yourself Jennifer Ann Gordon? When my first book came out, I was like, shouldn't I have picked a better name? And just, kept my real name to be my real name? But...
No, it's a perfectly good name.
No, it's because I wanted to keep saying it's Anne with an E, like Anne of Green Gables. And I say that a lot, even though nobody cares.
My middle name is also Anne, and I spell it the same.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like you're probably much younger than me, but we're probably in the same general age range where everyone has a middle name of Anne.
Yes, that's true.
Where I live specifically, every single person I know is either a Marie or an Anne.
A Marie or an Anne. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So I was always jealous of the people who were like a so-and-so Marie. I'm like, so exotic.
Right. It felt that way. Right. And then every now and then you'd meet somebody from somewhere else, and it would be a different different middle name that you'd never heard. What?
I know,
people can have that as a middle name.
I know. I thought it was required. So I'm from New England, New Hampshire specifically, and everybody has a French last name and Anne or Marie as a middle name. And the years of which I am part of, when I was born and for many years after, Jennifer was the only name you could have. I guess you could also have a Jessica or a Heather or an Amanda, but it was
not like an Amy. Was Amy in there?
Oh no, Amy. Yeah, no, I had 2 neighbors named Amy.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Same. Absolutely same.
So I feel like all of our parents just opened up a baby book and was like, well, if that's good enough for our neighbors, that's good enough for us. Let's not give it any thought. Had I been a boy, I just would have been named after my dad. As a girl, my mom, I remember, had a couple names she wanted, and they were Kellyanne, Melody Ann, Mary Ann, and something else. And my father said, and I quote, though, and this is no offense to those names, but he said, those are the names for daytime strippers.
Oh.
And then they didn't give it another thought until I was born, and they were like, I guess just Jennifer is fine. But Jennifer Ann. I don't know where the show went already.
Speechless.
You're speechless. You're dumbfounded.
Like in a good way, because it's hilarious, but also
I was
like,
like, no, you and both the Treys right now, for people watching this, they're like, how do we get her off the show?
No, no.
I was trying to respond without also dissing those names because everything that came to mind felt like that. And I wasn't trying to do that, but like,
I know, because those names are fine, but this was the
Hmm.
70s, you know, and my dad was, you know, this one in a line of many Andrew James Gordons. So I think anything that sounded too like flowery, like Melody Ann, of course he would be like, oh, she'll be up to no good if that's her name. Like it's almost too pretty.
she'll be in trouble.
She'll be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say that my dad was named the same as well, but he's not.
Oh, that would have been amazing, though.
He's a Richard George.
Oh, well, I feel
Which
like that
sounds
might be my
very,
uncle's
like,
name.
British and
That is so British. Like, oh,
Mhm.
Sir Richard George of Lancaster. Yeah.
he's like Richard George the Third. He's actually not. But it
Now you're
sounds
just
like he should
lying
be.
to us?
Yeah, no,
You're
I'm
just
just
like,
like he should be.
oh,
It
his
sounds
name
like
is
he
Richard
should be.
George the Third. Really? You're like, no, his name's not even Richard.
We never even called him Dad. It was just Richard George the Third.
Yeah. And did you have to say it in like a very specific accent too, like, and bow down while wearing a little suit? Same.
I cannot wait to call him after this and tell him.
Be like, you were the star of our podcast.
He'll ask to be on the show, and we don't want that.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm lucky my mother doesn't even understand what a podcast is. So
Oh.
it's really good. She's always like, oh, when you talk into the internet. Like, yep. When I talk into the internet, that is what I'm doing.
The visual of that is so great.
Look at Trey.
I'm just gonna be dying under this table.
If Trey disappears, I'll just be like, okay, he's
But
gone.
we have replacement trays, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, you've got me. I'm the new co-host, Trey. Trey the Third. Trey James Gordon the Third.
I do want to call out, we did have a question in our chat here from Allison. Allison, thank you for tuning in.
Oh, I
Uh,
was like, that's my co-host on Vox Vomitus.
Oh, yes.
yes.
Tell us about Vox Vomitus and your
Oh,
co-host.
I was like, oh, do we need to hear the question from Allison?
Oh,
now?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Was it a question?
No, I'm sorry. Get to the question first.
Was it heckling?
Allison asked, is Trey's middle name Anne? And I responded, no, it's actually Marie.
Oh, very good, Trey.
We needed
so yes,
some balance to this.
we needed some balance.
Thank you.
Allison
Thank you.
is my book wife, my book sister. We started Vox Vomitus 4 years ago. Last week was just
Okay.
our 4-year Voxiversary.
Oh, great.
And yeah, thanks.
That's
It's
a
been,
good. I mean,
it's been it's a lot. Yeah. And we were like,
but most
okay,
podcasts do not last, and so
and
congrats.
we've done 164 episodes.
Ooh.
And that's a lot of books we've read, a lot of luckily we have a lot of authors who come back over and over again, but it's a comedic look at what goes on inside the writer's cave. Like we like to say, we talk about what goes right and what goes horribly wrong. Somehow along the way, the show has morphed into like some prop comedy and costumes. So like Alice and I will read the book and we discuss like, what should we wear? What should we eat during the show? What should we have like props if, like if there's so yeah, that's what we do. It's very serious. What should we eat? If people talk about snacks during it, like we just recently had Lindy Ryan on with her book, Bless Your Heart. And the grandma in that book always had like a pocket full of butterscotch candies with like those really noisy wrappers. So like during the show, we would just be like with our dishes of butterscotch candies, like as Lindy was talking, just like opening them up. And she liked it. I know it seems like passive aggressive bullying, but she liked it. She understood it was love being said.
Honestly, with that, I think you would really like Sarah Addison Allen. Most of her books have some sort of like cooking aspect to it, and in the back she'll include some recipes.
Oh, I know Allison would love that. I can barely eat anything. I'm one of those, sensitive belly people. So I live vicariously through the snacks half the time, where I'm like, I remember when I used to be able to eat that.
So Allison said here, I'm always looking for an excuse to justify me eating on the show. So I'm assuming Allison does most of the eating then.
She does. Sometimes I'll have like a snack, but it's just a prop. But
Okay.
but I'm a vegetarian who also can't eat gluten. So yeah.
That's tricky. Could you
yeah.
do a butterscotch candy though?
I did do butterscotch candies, yes.
All right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah. No, I can do sugar. I can do like garbage food.
Of course. Garbage food. I love that.
Yeah.
We don't get the chance to eat on the show other than
It's your show. You could do whatever
I know,
you wanted.
like that sounds stupid. Like we don't get the chance. We could make our own chance. We did though, twice. Well, once we actually ate on the show, and it was chocolate because we had a chocolatier on the show that actually sent us chocolate before the show, and it was the most amazing day.
Oh my gosh, I would like to get that person on our show also. Did they
Yeah.
write a book? If they didn't, I don't care.
Constantine Zigo is his name.
Mm-hmm.
I just want somebody to send me chocolate.
It's oh my gosh, so
Like the kind of chocolate that you're like, this is why other countries are so snobby about how crappy our chocolate is.
yeah. Except he's here in the U.S.
What?
Yeah, he's just got it down.
Love it.
I don't know if he wrote a book, but maybe since we've had him on, he has, and maybe that would be a suggestion for him. I don't even know if he has a cookbook, but he does do TikTok tutorials on how to make all of his, not all, I should not say it that way, how to make many of the things he makes. Like he'll teach you how to make a really great hot chocolate or how to make butterscotch.
If he's fancy on TikTok, he probably has a book deal. People are snapping up those TikTok people left and right.
For his sake, he does, because A, you could have him on your show with a book, and B, because he deserves that level of success.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
reading what you wrote, Sarah Addison Allen. Oh, okay, sorry. I was like, who wrote this?
What's happening? It was a ghost.
I do want to ask, because as an fellow author, like talking to other authors, what are some things that are going through your mind? Like when you're crafting that podcast as an author, what sorts of questions are you thinking about as you are crafting that show?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't think of any questions beforehand. I hate to say that. I do read every book, and Allison and I, we read every book for every author that comes on our show. So before showtime, Allison and I will usually like sit down virtually, and by sit down virtually, I mean frantically text each other for like days and days about this book, about, you know, what struck us, what worked, what didn't work, what we're geeked up about. And Allison and I have a very natural conversation, but we never plan really like, what are we going to ask this person? And we just let the conversation kind of go where it's going to go. And sometimes, like, you know, I just on Fox Womanist, other interviews I've done, I also do the interviews for New England Crime Bake. I interview for the Book Fest. And there are times at the end of an interview, I go, did we even talk about the book? Like, I think we talked about it a little bit. And I'm a co-host for NBC Radio's House of Mystery. Same thing. We're like, did we talk about the book? I think we did. But I'm a huge believer, honestly, and I've felt like this my entire life when I was working in an art gallery, when I was in my 20s, when I did theater, when I sold art. If somebody gets to know the artist or the writer, they're going to be interested in what they're doing. So I think for me, a lot of times when I'm interviewing somebody, yes, we're talking about the book, but I really want to get to know who that person is. And chances are, if I really like somebody, I'm probably going to like what they write. Like, you know, when you're just like talking to somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, we already have so much in common. You know, if you pick up their book, you're going to go, I get it.
I agree.
They get me. And same thing with visual art. Like, there's been plenty of painters, photographers that I've just gotten to know over the years. And then when I see their work, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Trey, you might want to weigh in on that?
He's like, no, I don't.
You know, I have gushed about it enough to many people. So I will just say we had a guest last week that that was kind of that impact for me. We got to have the author of Wicked on our podcast, and
Gregory
so
McGuire. Yeah, that was
yeah,
last week.
so
Oh gosh, I
so
have to follow that.
No, no, you're part of it because
you
you're
Okay.
part of the whole big thing.
The big picture. No, I
Mm-hmm.
get it. I'm like, oh,
but like
that's amazing.
but
It
like
was
that
so much
connection.
fun.
But
Yeah.
that connection that you talk about, like it's there. And when we start to get to know that whoever the guest is that week, we know kind of from the green room to the podcast of like kind of what that episode is going to be like. And truly, 99.9% of the time, we find that one thing that makes them light up and they just start talking. We're like, yes, this is what we wanted. This is the person that we were hoping to meet.
I love that. I love that so much. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the gift. I think that podcast and being an interviewer, like that's what we bring to the world. That's what we bring to ourselves. Like just to be selfish. Like started this podcast. I started Vox Vomitus 4 years ago. Allison and I were talking, and at the end of the day, we just really wanted to connect with authors that we already liked their work. And we wanted to be able to talk to, because both of us just had a debut novel come out 4 years ago. And we wanted to talk about people who were, doing better than we were. Like, what is it like to be a New York Times bestseller? And we just wanted to like get to know people that we really admired. And it's turned into something that I never would have expected. Like I've made such amazing friends through our podcast, like interviewing people and then getting to become really good friends with them. Like a million years ago, before the podcast even started, I said to myself, I want to interview Josh Mallerman. I love all of his books. I loved Bird Box. I loved this. I loved that. And like, he's one of my ideal guests. And we had him on the show and he was fantastic. And then we had him back and then we had him back and then we had him back. And then he blurbed one of my books, and then he wrote an introduction to one of my books. And now, weirdly, I don't know how this happened. Like, even my husband's always like, it's weird that, like, the other day, Josh was like, you're one of my best friends. And I'm like, how did this happen? I'm like, oh, it happened because of the podcast.
But also because you reached out and you're real and you have relatable things, and there's
exactly.
There's definitely something more deep than just it's a show.
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of, and I think you guys do the same thing, is you just allow a conversation to happen as opposed to coming in with like, well, these are the questions, whether she likes it or not. This is what's going to happen, even if it makes for like a dull show. We've all been on those shows. We've all heard those shows. Like it's best to just connect.
It is best. Yeah. And natural curiosity carries us really far.
Yes. When you're like, wait, what did you just say? I have a question about that.
That and like they get a lot of the people that we feature get asked the same questions all the time. So we don't well, this isn't an interview show, even though it comes across that way, and we do have questions, we have a lot of things we ask over and over, but we really do want to know those things, like
how tall I am. I'm 5'2".
Like how tall you are, whether or not that's wallpaper, things like that. The beetle thing.
The beetle thing. Yep. Now petrified of beetles. Wasn't petrified of beetles. Before we went on air, everybody, I told a lovely story about the other night waking up in the middle of the night to a sound. Opened my eyes, and there was what I thought was a mouse crawling up my wall, but it was actually a beetle larger than my thumb.
Wow.
And I do not live in a tropical place, so that is not something you often see, especially not indoors. So I did my best to shield my husband and my dog from that terror. I did not do a good job because by the time I came back to the room with like a paper towel, it had scurried like kind of out of my reach.
Ooh.
And I wasn't letting that thing be in our bedroom any longer. So my husband is taller than me, thank goodness. And he was able to transport that to a better place.
I will join you in that front and share in that. I'm sorry to be trauma bonding over this, but
I love trauma bonding. I'm a horror author. That's like all I do.
I was sitting in my first apartment that I had rented myself like This I was out in the adult world,
Yeah,
um,
I was like,
adult. But I had just gotten my first job, my first like everything with this great apartment that had an actual working fireplace, and the flue for it went all the way out of the house. It was great. Well, I'm sitting there drinking my morning concoction of
your morning bourbon,
my morning
my
bourbon.
morning margarita,
It
and
helps me get
then
through the day.
Uh,
Um,
no judgment here. We're all
yeah.
artists.
And then suddenly I hear this kind of like metallic flapping about
Oh
and
no.
coming from the fireplace. And I go to open the door, and as soon as I get within about a foot away from the fireplace itself, out comes a great moth, like the size of my hand, just
Yes,
flying
they
out of
sound
my
like
face.
bats.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
Oh.
like freakishly got close to the camera with a pointy finger. Trey!
So yeah, it flew directly into my face and had to scurry because I didn't live with anybody else at the time and had to fling
You
that
had to
thing.
burn your apartment down, didn't you?
Arson is not my favorite thing to do, but it was effective.
You know, I love moths in theory. But yeah, once they get so big that they have like the body of a mouse and the wings of a bat, and
Mhm.
they like when you can feel the wind from them when they're flapping,
when
I'm
they
just
shriek at you.
I'm just like a baby, like I'm a baby, I think, when it comes to I mean, really all bugs, all bugs. And now I'm like, I feel like I've talked about them too long that at any point in time, if I start screaming, you're gonna know that like there's a spider like Shelops that's coming at
Oh
me.
yeah.
Or to go back to the Lord of the Rings, which I know was before we went live, everyone, but we had a, stimulating conversation
Mm-hmm.
about all things bugs and somehow Lord of the Rings got
Right.
worked
Do
in.
you have? Speaking of that, do you have a sword nearby in case a bug were to encroach?
No, because I'm in my bedroom. I also
Oh,
don't have a sword anywhere in the house, but I do have like sharp things
okay.
that could work, but
Okay.
not here. I just have like a stack of my books in case that ever comes up.
It will come up. We're on the cusp of it coming up.
We're on the cusp.
I mean, speaking of phobias and fears, I know one of the genres that you've written in is actually horror. So I'm kind of curious how you got into the realm of one writing, and then how you came to find the love for writing horror or more of that like dark fantasy sort of elements.
You know, so I don't know why I've always been really like in interested in things, all things creepy.
Mm.
I have a theory that, and I've said it before, and I'll say it over and over again. When I was little, my uncle Richard, stayed with us for a while. I think I was 9 or 10, and he had just come back from like Germany or New York or someplace that sounded like so fancy to somebody from New Hampshire. He was a painter and a chef, and he had books that he was just reading for fun. And one of them had a giant cat on it.
Hmm.
That book was Pet Sematary. I didn't know that Pet Sematary was, a horror novel at all. I didn't even understand what a horror novel was. But I thought, oh, he's reading a book about a cat. And I remember snatching it out of the room that he was staying in and sneaking it upstairs to my bedroom and like reading it behind my dollhouse when I was supposed to be napping and just being so petrified, but also at the same time so sad because Pet Cemetery at its heart is a story about a family who loses their child. And at like a very young age, I was scared and sad reading that book. And at the end of the day, I thought it was the sadness. It was that loss of something that scared me more than anything.
Hmm.
So like somehow in my like little child's brain, that was like my first like realization that I liked grief horror. Because like to me, grief, losing someone or something you love, whether it's a loved one, a job, a house, part of yourself, that's the scariest thing in the world. And so I kind of wanted to explore that. It took me many years to find the courage to actually legitimately put pen to paper. Of course, I dabbled in poetry and I wrote an indie comic and like, things like that. But it wasn't until like, 2018, 2019 when I wrote my first book. And it ended up being Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. And it was a beautiful grief ghost story that went on to win several awards. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not terrible at this. Maybe this is something.
Were you able to draw on some personal loss with some of the or attitudes or whatever?
Yes. Yeah. So, I don't want to get like too deep and too sad because, grief horror. So Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, the core of that story is a man who's lost everything. He's lost his wife and his young son in a very horrific accident. He feels responsible for it. And what he would, like, at what lengths would he go to reconnect with his son? Like, he hears about a haunted island that if you go there and if you just want it bad enough, you might be able to reconnect. I don't have biological children. So I know I've had people like talk to me and they're just like, well, you don't have children. But for many years, I was a stepmother to a little girl, and that for many, many years. And that relationship ended in a way that definitely severed the chance for me to ever have a relationship with her. She also had a lot of health problems. So like to me, in my brain, she is always a 4-year-old girl. She's not now. Now she's grown. I have no relationship with her. I can't. I wish I could. But so I did feel that like immediate loss of who had been my child. So I won't say that didn't have anything to do with, the fact that I've written several stories that have, that loss of a child at their core. But they're also fun. I mean, there's fun stories too. It's not just dead kids. People who are watching this are like, oh, golly, can we talk about the Beatles again?
Well, we were talking about how some authors are kind of I marvel at those individuals who are able to look at something and make something beautiful from what we may consider the darker aspects of life. Yeah. So it really takes, I think, a lot of vulnerability for that type of writer or artist of any kind to see that, draw something from it, and then turn it into something for other people to then intake. Yeah. It's a way, I think, for people to still be seen if they are not the ones creating it. It's still a way for them to say, I feel seen in a way that maybe I wasn't before.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like I love the horror community and the horror genre in general, because I feel like so much of it is just metaphor about trauma. It's metaphor for mental illness. It's metaphor for, so many things. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's easier to be scared of a monster than it is to be scared of like global warming or the bug on my wall. It's easier to pretend that if I'm walking through, the woods or a city street or something, that the thing that's stalking me is a wolf man and not a man, not, a person that I could know and love. So, I love horror. I have since I was a kid, obviously the Pet Sematary thing, but also just like poetry that I used to read. I was obsessed with Tennyson when I was a kid, and things like The Lady of Shalott, things like The May Queen. They all have this like gothic-y, ghostly woman that's like, and it just, I love it. I always have. But also my favorite dance is the foxtrot, so it's like two sides of one weird coin.
I do kind of have to ask of when I think to like I'm starting like 4 different sentences. Let me just pick one.
I, we, and that.
I, we, they, the mouse in my pocket.
The mouse in your pocket.
Better than a
it's
beetle.
the thing. While we do call ourselves a modern romantic podcast, we talk to authors from don't give me that. It's been a
Do
long
you
day.
know what show we're doing
It's
today?
been a long day, Emily.
It has been a long day,
It has.
and it's hot.
So we call ourselves a modern romantic podcast, but we talk to authors from a wide variety of genres. And so with yours, you talk about like the gothic elements, and you also have talked about many things that delve into the realm of romanticism. For me, I kind of want to question, how do you maybe prevent yourself from going too far into almost like German expressionism, or go fall
Oh,
into the too dark of an aspect of a story?
oh, I guess I never stop myself. Like I feel like, well, at this point I try not to stop myself, but I always know that like my agent will stop me if it's like too, because I mean I've given her, versions of a book that's like out being shopped now, and she's like, you can't write this, like huge pages where she's like, no one, this is too much for right now.
Hmm.
Like, and I'm like, and it's not censorship, but it's let people get to know you again. So it's like, this would be like a novel that gets sold to, like, the big five, the big four, whatever we want to call it now, is let's make it as palatable, I should say, as possible. And like sometimes there are certain things that are just, you can't really do right away. Once you're best-selling author so and so so and so, I think that opens doors that you can really press the boundaries a little bit more. But that being said, I do a lot of short fiction, and I do a lot of creative nonfiction that is, kind of autofic, kind of memoir-ish, but I write it with like horror sensibilities and in the horror place, if you will. And those I never censor, and I never worry about going too dark, because they tend to be shorter pieces, and if they just don't work, then they just don't get included in something.
Hmm.
But I try not to censor myself, because once you get in your head and think, what if I go too far? Then you're not going to go far enough. And that's, that's advice I've been given. And it's hard. It's hard because you want people to read your work, and you want, people to buy your work, and you don't want the 1-star Goodreads reviews. You don't want that. But at the same time, you need to be writing from like that gross, messy part of you that is also somehow beautiful and inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to do.
This is something that maybe it's just my own ignorance speaking, but when a movie comes out, they come out with like, there's the Snyder cut. Couldn't there be a book that's like, this one's the Gordon cut?
I would love that. I would love that.
I think they do that, really.
I mean, Stephen King can do that. I mean, there's the original version of The Stand that came out, back in, I can't even remember. And then it's like, the unedited, the unabridged version of The Stand comes out, and there's, 100,000 more words. And there's,
we call it unabridged.
Yeah, we call it unabridged now. But I would love, especially on like re-releases of books, like if a book comes out like 5 or 10 years ago, and then there's a new version, new cover, new introduction by like some fancy author, I would always love it if I could get like stuff that ended up on like the cutting room floor of that first version, or even like a story, because sometimes I'll write like a backup mini short story that I just do to like create character stuff that never finds a place. Like, I have a short novel set, the Hotel series, which involves From Daylight to Madness and When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. And there was a side character in those books. Her name was Agnes, that ended up weirdly becoming like a fan favorite, even though she's, very difficult to enjoy, especially in When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. But like, I have all of these like notes about her that I just think, maybe someday those books will get re-released, or like a special edition, and I can release this weird like Agnes short story out onto the world. I would love that. I always, and I think this is like one of the reasons why I like doing a podcast and love interviewing authors is I want to know what ends up being cut. And I do ask about that a lot. I'm like, what did you take out and why? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just for length. Sometimes it's just that was backstory that didn't really need to be there. But I think as a writer, sometimes it needs to be there for us. Like we need to go through that like word vomit phase where it's like, here's 30,000 words about blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, that has nothing to do with this story, but it has everything to do with how this character actually behaves. And maybe again, that's like that theater person in me who's like, who is my character? What do they do? What were their 5 core memories?
Right.
You know, and not every reader needs that for like the plot of a book, but I need that as a writer writing the book.
Of course.
Something that kind of strikes me is like you could almost put all of that together into here's the lore Bible of for this book, and then publish something like that.
I mean, so like that gives me chills because like I would want that from every author that I love. I would love to do that. But I'm one of those readers because I am a very voracious reader. If I'm not writing or interviewing people or like working my day job, I'm reading all the time. And I would read or buy special editions of almost every book I love for sure. Yeah, a lore version of almost anything. But I'm somebody who will buy an ebook, an audiobook, a hardcover, and a paperback, all of the same book if I love it. And then if there's a special edition, I buy it too. Like that's, I always tell people, I'm like, you want me as a fan. Like, because I'll buy the same book fan. 5 times.
Sandra said, I'm enjoying From Daylight to Madness. You have such a great writing style.
Oh, thank you. And that's a hard book to enjoy. So thank you very much. It's, you know, a period piece. It's again about a loss of a child. It's about mental illness and how that was treated in the Victorian era. There's a lot going on in there. It's yeah. That book is very special to me. But
when you say it's hard to enjoy, is that like your own perspective or is that feedback you've actually gotten?
It's feedback I've gotten because I know a lot of people have like a hard pass of like, I will read anything except I won't read a book where a baby dies.
Okay.
And spoiler alert, first page of From Daylight to Madness is a baby dying after being alive for very few minutes. And what happens to somebody who is dealing with basically postpartum depression and the loss of a child when you're not supposed to ever mention those words. So I get it when people are like, I can't read that. That's a hard no for me. That's why I try to be open about what the books are about. Like, it's about this. And also I just think, you know, it's a sad story. There are uplifting things in it, but it is sad. I think it's beautiful. There are people who loved it a lot, but I know it's a hard read.
Okay.
But I also wrote a book about like people's faces rotting off, and that's a hard read, and it's in a different way.
And Sandra also followed it up with, but you write it eloquently.
Thank you.
So, yeah, well done. What are some of the better pieces of feedback that you have gotten that you love to hear?
I love to hear when people talk about the language being visceral. I tend to write on a more like literary side where I love the language. I love the rhythm of language. I love words. I love sentences. I love emotion behind them. I don't want to say I don't care about the plot, but the plot is secondary to my characters. I'm there for the feelings, the vibes. I like the language, and of course plot. But I love it when people understand or feel, I shouldn't say understand because that's like a bad word, to be like, oh, they understand it. No, when they feel it, when they feel what I'm doing with the language, because I use a lot of like poetry technique of like repetition in words, repetition in the sounds of words, in where certain sentences, key phrases, imagery, where that ends up in the book. When people feel that, when I get emails or messages of saying, so like for my book Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, there's a rope that is very important. And when I would get messages when it said like, when he took the rope out of the drawer, and that's all they had to say, and I knew, I'm like, they're right there, like they get what I'm doing. You know, I'll get other comments where it's like, enough with the rope already, I get it. I'm like, okay, that's fine, you can get it, but I like it when people feel it, when the language is visceral, when it's just like, I hate to use the word vibe because it makes me sound like I should be on TikTok. And I'm like too old and sweaty for TikTok. But yeah, like when they get the whole, like the vibe, the feel, the mood of the book. That's my favorite. And also when I just hear very honest things of, you described trauma in a way that made me really understand it, or it made me feel seen, or, you know, and I guess my favorite is, I tend to write queer characters, especially queer female characters, because that is who I am. Most of my characters are bisexual, whether it has anything to do with the plot or not. It's who I am. And I write them in a way that it's not the point of the story. It just is who they are. And when people message me and say like, oh gosh, thank you for not making it be like blah blah blah, you know, it wasn't a such and such bisexual story, that would have been fine, but it was just who the character was. And they were just like, oh, I love that they could experience things that didn't just necessarily have to be about their sexuality.
Yeah, it's you tap into that emotional side of people and let that just be them. It's authentic.
That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, it's authentic for me when I'm writing it, and it's authentic for me as a person. Like, I don't go through every day of my life being like, how am I experiencing this as a bisexual woman? No, that's just who I am. So like, I'm just experiencing things. So that being said, that's how I, flavor, especially most of my female main characters, because I'm also a Leo. So all of them are me. Truth is out.
Well, if you take anybody off the street anywhere, their whole identity and their whole person isn't just one element of any part of their lives. So it would make sense that someone isn't just their sexuality.
Exactly. I remember I was at a conference a few years ago and we had to do like fun facts about yourself. And we're like, oh God, I hate fun facts. Like, you never realize how not fun you are until you're like, oh no, what's a fun fact? And then they're like, or like, just like, some sentences about like who you are as a person. And I remember I said, I'm a bisexual ballroom dancing horror writer and a dog mom. And they were like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, oh, also a vegetarian. Like, just like random things. I'm like, but when I write something, or when you get to know me, I don't seem just like a bag of random things. We're people. So I want my characters to not just seem like bags of random things, I guess. I feel less than eloquent right now, but it is like on day 16 of heat advisory. So my brain is cooked.
I think it goes back to what you were saying about the podcast, of having people on your podcast and getting to know them as people. I think it's the same thing of the way that you write. You also want to draw from people that same level of authenticity. They're not just an author, they're also human. So they come to the stage with more than just, I can write great books. I have a lot more to offer.
Yeah. And the characters I create, that's what I want. Like, you know, when you start writing, it's like, this is my character. This is who they are. This is what I know about them. But as I'm writing, I'm getting to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And that first draft, you know, the vomit draft, the word vomit draft, I'm adding in everything I know about them. Like that stuff, you know, a lot of it gets cut, but every once in a while there's, you know, I try to keep like 5 core memories of who this person is, who all of them are. And that, you know, it flavors how we live our life. Why wouldn't it flavor how a character lives their life?
I would like to know, as you're writing the getting to know you portions of the characters, do you also sing the song "Getting to
Getting to
Know
know
You"?
you, getting to know
Getting
all about you.
know.
So I was in The King and I. But
Were you?
I was, but I just as a royal wife and a dancer, I was not the lead. But I have that song stuck in my head a lot. It's like just in life in general. I tend to sing it to, like I sing it to my dog, and I sang it to the dog I had before him.
Oh.
Like a lullaby. So that's cool. Also, I write horror, everyone. So I'm like, this is what I sing to my puppy.
I want to know about your puppy.
Lord Tubby.
Is that his name?
Well, yes, his name is Lord Tubby. He's magical. He's a Coton de Tulier. If anybody who's watching this or like reading the notes on it afterwards, he is all over my Instagram. He does not have his own Instagram because I feel like if Lord Tubby had his own Instagram, nobody would ever go to my Instagram ever again. So Lord Tubby is part of my Instagram. He is a little dog. He's a Coton de Tulier, which is fancy talk for little cotton ball dog. He is it's going to sound super tough and cool, a Madagascar pirate dog. But the Madagascar pirate dog, Coton de Tulier, was bred specifically to be little clowns of the ocean. They were put on ships just to keep the spirit light. So he definitely has a very silly personality. He's not like good at things. So
The way you said that needs to be clipped.
yeah, he's not good at things. He's very good at like
I love
loving
that.
you and just being very adorable.
He's not like good at things. It's brilliant. If you go to Jennifer's Instagram right now, you could see pictures of this little white floof, and that is a great description. If anything, if there was a piracy situation at sea, I could see this dog being so distracting that pirating would not occur.
Right. Like they don't even care that they have scurvy. This dog
Yeah.
is that cute. They're like, I haven't seen the sun or had an orange in years. Do a little dance, pirate dog. Yeah, because he doesn't really do tricks, but he loves to like walk on his hind legs and make silly noises and like spin around. Did we train him to do any of those things? No, but we like to say, because we're dancers, he can dance, but he just did that. And we were like, let's just call that dance. Yeah. No, he's great. So yeah, Lord Tubby, he's amazing.
Very cute. Those eyes really do it.
Oh my gosh, he's a maniac. So cute.
Yep. So, go check that out. It's worth
Yeah,
it.
I'm like, yes, all right, Lord Tubby, definitely check that out. I do sing to him, and we sing about him, and we write songs about him. And anyways, maybe there'll be a musical someday about Lord Tubby.
Oh, I would go and see that, please.
I know. I feel like I have friends who are like, oh yeah, we definitely read your books. But then if I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to write a musical about Lord Tubby, they're like, I would love that. Like they're immediately engaged. They're just like, that more than anything is what I want.
Immediately, yes.
And
Immediately,
Emily,
yes.
I would definitely go see a musical about Huckleberry.
Oh.
Who's Huckleberry? Is that your
Huckleberry's
cat?
my dog.
Your dog, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
Around
assumed
here.
cat.
Huckleberry? Do I hear him? No?
You can sense his presence.
Sometimes he comes running. I think he's upstairs. Sometimes he's right around here, but I don't see him, so...
There are times that, so Lord Tubby is not in the room with me right now, but there are times that he is like just off the camera just like full blown eye
Huckleberry.
trying to make eye contact with me the entire time I'm doing a podcast, like interviewing somebody, like asking the hard hitting questions, like if you had to cast your book as Muppets, who would be who? And my dog is just like shaking and staring at me.
Your dog could just be a Muppet.
I know, he basically is a
Yeah.
Muppet. Yeah.
Yeah. Valid.
No.
You know, that is honestly a really great question. So
Isn't
I'm
it a
going to
great question?
I'm going to pose the same to you. If you could turn one of your books into a partnership with the Jim Henson.
Oh,
Hmm.
so I feel like this was a leading question, but I'm going to answer it anyways. So my book,
Okay.
Pretty Ugly, I have a version of it here, but I don't have the current cover. I have the old cover.
Okay.
This is the original cover. This is a story of an Instagram influencer and a failed politician at the end of the world after the world is ravaged by a virus that makes your face bleed and rot off of your body. If it doesn't kill you, you're left incredibly scarred in the face, and you still might die. So an Instagram influencer and a politician who was like labeled like the new JFK. Like it's a story of these two people and how they kind of traverse the end of the world and meet up on an abandoned train in Italy. Long story short, my main character is named Sam. My main male character is named Sam. And his nickname is Sam the Eagle because when he was little, his parents said he looked like Sam the Eagle, the Muppet. But they also were just like, but that was a Republican. And I'm not going to get into like, but they had different political views, his family and him and Sam the Eagle, the Muppet. But Sam the Eagle, for sure, would be my character Sam in Pretty Ugly. My female main character, Amelia, I mean, she's an Instagram influencer. So if I could say like somehow like a younger Miss Piggy,
Oh, okay.
not like jaded working 9 to 5 Miss Piggy, but like Miss Piggy, not Muppet Babies Miss Piggy, but like if Miss Piggy was like before Kermie turned her down like the 20th time when she was still like, I've got hopes and dreams, but she's like still starting to get beat down, that Miss Piggy.
Allison said Janice.
Janice is too cool though, because Janice is Janis Joplin.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Amelia. So there's a scene, okay, because Allison knows this book. The scene where Amelia hooks up with the girl in the bar before the end of the world, that would be Janice. And this is, I've now, I guess, thought a lot about who would be Muppets in my book that I'm like, no, that's Janice.
It does sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Amelia's stepfather, Dr. Paul, would be, I want to say, like Rolf, but with like the outward look of the Swedish chef. Any hoops, everybody, you should be reading Pretty Ugly. And then
Allison then said Piggy working at the makeup counter in Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yes, exactly that.
No.
I'm going to do a little brief shout out. Allison has a book coming out tomorrow called The Ranchers Take Manhattan, which weirdly is a Muppets reference, which is why I'm like, we have to talk about it.
How perfect.
It's the 5th in her Bourbon Books series. Hilarious, funny, smart, romantic comedy books. Ranchers Take Manhattan. It's out tomorrow. Okay. So yeah, Muppets came full circle there.
Beautiful. Congratulations, Allison.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Tomorrow is a big day.
Before we leave the Muppets totally behind, I do want to ask, in every movie, there's always at least one human person and interacting with the rest of the Muppets. Who is that in your book?
So, you know, I love the memes that are like, I want a Muppet movie that is Adam Driver and only Muppets, and he just like plays it totally straight. Adam Driver is my movie boyfriend, so like part of me would say Adam Driver and everybody else Muppets, but Adam Driver would have been the character of Sam the Eagle. So in Pretty Ugly, who would be the only human? There's very few people that live to the end of this.
Well, it's only a character you're killing, right?
Yeah, it's only a character I'm killing, not a person.
Well, not if they play themselves.
Yeah. Um, okay, I feel like Sam the Eagle's father in the book is also a politician. It's like a political family. Like I said, it's like the new Kennedys. Um,
Mhm.
so I'd say his father should be played by.
Sean Bean.
Oh my God, well, I just love him. Has
Yeah,
to
but
be
he
like a
dies
little
in
bit more.
everything, so
I
it
know he
fits.
dies in everything.
I'm
Like,
sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
I know. Now I'm just thinking about Sean Bean. Like, yeah. God, that's a good question. Okay. Oh, now I'm panicking. Like, I don't want to say. Actually, I am going to say it. I'm going to say Robert De Niro
Okay.
because I feel like even though he's quote unquote overrated, maybe like it would just be hilarious to see him because I think there's like a clip of him on something with Kermit the Frog and he was like trying to like hold it together. I feel like just like maybe now he could play the vice president of the United States and just have like everybody be Muppets and just like two throwaway scenes.
Okay,
He could do
that
it.
I would
Yeah.
watch that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then maybe he could like Dame Judi Dench it like when she was in Shakespeare in Love and she was only on screen for like 6 minutes and got an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, that was
Like,
incredible.
so like maybe he could do it for a Muppet movie. Like, oh, he was only on screen 6 minutes and it was a Muppet movie and he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Roman on YouTube said Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. So that's my husband commenting from upstairs. And he knows very well that Anthony Hopkins is actually starring in my brain in my book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. So he can't be in Pretty Ugly.
We can't kill him off yet. We must protect Anthony Hopkins at all costs.
I mean, I feel like, yes, correct.
Um, one thing that's always kind of mulling around whenever I talk to any kind of creative type is when you talk to other people specifically that are looking either to get into the same field of art that you are, be it dance if they enjoy that, if they enjoy writing, what pieces of advice do you give to newcomers to the art?
I feel like I'm going to say like the most controversial, like wrong advice ever. Um,
We'll stop you if you do.
no, but
Just kidding.
so, but here's the thing, like
Like, no, bad.
no, bad. Just be like, oh my gosh, the electricity went out. Um, so I haven't always made my living as a writer. I haven't always made my living as an actress. I've made most of my living for the past like 20 years as a dance professional. And before that, I was like a visual artist. But I can proudly say since my very early 20s, I haven't had a real job. I'm using these air quotes because I think everything I've ever done is a real job. But a lot of people would be like, being a dancer is not a real job. Like, blah, blah, blah is not a real job.
No. Support the arts. They're real jobs.
Support the arts. So I went to school for theater. I went back to school and was like, I'm going to study art history. And then I was like, am I just collecting degrees that are just like never going to get me a real job? And that's when I realized like I don't have a backup plan. Make it work. Like take the swan dive. Like, figure out a way to make it work. That's probably not parents everywhere of like college kids are like, no, don't tell them not to have a backup plan. But what if you didn't have a backup plan? I went to school for theater. I did it, and I've worked in performance for many, many years. I think writing is weirdly a part of that still. Like, when I went back to school, it was like art history and English. But yeah, not having a backup plan really forces you to figure out, I think most importantly, how much you love what you want to do. Because if you don't have a backup plan, you're going to find out real quick if you were actually meant to be a full-time author, be a full-time actor, be a full-time dancer, because it's really hard. And it's heartbreaking a lot of the time, but the moments that it's not heartbreaking are so stinking beautiful that maybe it's worth it. And if it's not worth it, there's no shame in that. That's when you get your backup plan. But try it without. Like, fail a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Fail. I mean,
Yes.
I'm in my 40s. I'm still failing. It still hurts. But then at the end of the day, like, you write that beautiful sentence, or somebody messages you about how much they love your work, or, you know, your short story wins an award, and you're just like, oh, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it, even if my house has beetles.
Well said.
Yeah. People are like, why don't you just like get those exterminated? I'm like, first of all, that's mean. Also, who can afford it? We're artists.
I think that's really well said, and I don't think that's controversial. If
Yeah.
I could be honest, I think I think there's an expectation sometimes that of
That you're going to
having
go
that.
to school for theater and have an accounting minor. So it's like,
Yes.
yes, you're gonna be an artist. You're gonna try that for 1 year, and then you're going to work for your uncle's accounting firm.
No.
Or you can live in a house filled with beetles and be an artist.
I'll take the Beatles and be an
Beatles.
artist.
Yes.
Just not Beetlejuice, please.
No, I'm not a fan of Beetlejuice. I know that's the most controversial thing I'm ever going to say. I rode my scooter to the theater to see Beetlejuice when I was a kid, illegally, because my parents were like, you are not allowed to ride your scooter 3 miles to the movie theater to see that movie. And I did, and I fell down a hill, and I skinned my knee,
Oh, no.
and I still watched Beetlejuice, but all I remember is that I was like sitting in the theater bleeding and going, my parents are going to ground me.
Wow.
So now I'm not excited for the Beetlejuice sequel. That's trauma.
Well, you know, I don't think your take on it is necessarily. I mean, maybe it's controversial for a certain mindset of people. My parents had that mindset, and that's very
Mine.
relatable. Like,
Yeah.
when I was going to go to college, their attitude was I needed to go for these certain things, these certain degrees, and the things I wanted to do were not part of that. And I could not understand why plan A had to be the fall back on things, and the plan A wasn't the thing I really wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And it made no sense to me. Like, why are we planning for failure?
Why are we planning to fail?
Yeah.
I remember saying that to my dad because, you know, I paid for my own college, so I got to make all the choices, like, guilt-free. But I remember he was like, so what are you going to school for? And I'm like, theater. And he was like theater management or stage managing. And I was like, actually, no, it's just strictly acting. And like the look on his face was like, oh my gosh, you're like a curly-haired girl who's 5'2", who can't sing, with like eczema, and you think you're going to be like an actress. And I remember him saying, but like, and I know he meant it out of love. He's like, and you're probably going to end up being a secretary. So make sure you take some classes for that too. I'm like, I don't think they teach secretary classes at my fine arts college. Like that. I'm taking clowning. You know, like I had to balance a chair on my face. Like there was no typing involved. But I knew he meant well, and I was like, okay, yeah. And
Go ahead.
no, I'm like, and it like I know he said it out of love, that's why now when people are like, "What's your advice?" and I'm like, "Don't have a backup plan." I just like picture my dad's little face going, "I mean, you're gonna be a secretary," and I've never been a secretary.
Or go for it like there is no backup plan.
Yeah, just go for it.
Yeah.
And get a really good emotional support system of your friends, and most of all yourself. Figure that out, because look, we're all artists and we're all completely messed up in the head, and it's really hard to support ourselves at all, like emotionally. But get that somehow inside yourself. Get a core group of people that believe in you and you believe in them, and just you know, always remember, and I feel like my husband told me this and he probably saw it on the Daily Show. I know AI is like taking over like all arts supposedly right now, but AI has like we have something that AI doesn't, and that's really shitty parents. So, quote unquote. So like AI can never really, you know, like take over the arts completely. And it's a joke that's not mine, and I don't know where he told. Like he heard it on something, and I'm like, I'm gonna co-opt that. It was probably Jon Stewart or like, or Seth Meyers, who I went to high school with.
Oh yeah,
Really?
I went to high school technically with his younger brother, but Seth Meyers' mom gave me a D in 7th grade French. So I have that going for me.
Wound that still stings.
That is again trauma.
Now, en français.
En français. No, I got a D.
Oh, no.
Trauma.
That's a great response to that.
I got a D.
No,
I mean,
got a
the
D.
D was so valid. It probably should have been lower, but Madame Myers was very nice.
Still, I think that your stance on that and what you're saying to going for it with so much force behind it, I agree with that. I'm gonna add, but don't be afraid to add in other things as you're exploring. Go with it with your entire might.
Yeah.
But then if you see something else that interests you, make that part of the journey and kind of pick that up along as you go.
I love that you said that because like, so when I was little, like, of course I was like on stage by the time I was 3, jazz tap ballet, like, oh, you're going to be a ballerina. I'm not a ballerina. I don't have that body. You're going to be a tap dancer. You're going to be this, you're going to be that. You know, injuries happen, life happens. But I will say I became a professional ballroom dancer at the age of 31. So maybe I wasn't a ballerina, but the dance thing still ended up happening because I was able to see other ways into it. And I was like, oh, well, ballroom dance is different. And I had never ballroom danced until that age. And I was like, okay, let's try it. Like,
and it was a dance you could do.
And it was a dance I could do.
So find the dance you can do.
Find the dance you can do. Oh my gosh, that should be like a bumper sticker.
It should.
Oh my gosh, market that.
We're about to.
I'm like, oh God. I was like, who do we ask for that? Lord Tubby, get on that. He'll be your intern. We don't need Huckleberry to do that grunt work. Huckleberry can be a paid intern.
Oh, yes.
Huckleberry is currently sleeping in the cat bed.
I mean, that's paid intern work right there, if I ever heard it.
He's milking it.
Jennifer, this last hour has been incredible. You are so.
I'm a delight.
No, you really are. Truthfully,
as I almost did this, I'm like, don't do a dog pause.
For those that are listening,
those are just listening.
You are missing out on the visuals.
That's
and
from dance training.
So I love that you said that because so many times during Vox Vomitus, we say, those of you just listening, you don't understand that we just did some weird thing where it's like, let's put my eyeball on the camera. And it's like, oh, don't do that. Be professional. So yes, everybody, I just, for whatever reason, I got a compliment and I did little like dog paws, like how much is that doggy in the window style.
Oh, I do agree with Arthur. We have to have you back.
I would love to come back.
Yes, please come back.
I would love to come back.
So great. This is so great.
I feel like we have so much more to discuss.
I know, it's hard to believe it's been an hour.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you both so much. I always get like a little nervous being the guest on a podcast because I'm so used to asking people questions. I'm like, oh no, my being a guest muscles have atrophied. What if they ask me something and I just do dog paws?
What if I respond to a compliment that way?
Yeah. And then, yeah, I guess you can still do that, and it's a fine interview.
This is yes, this has been great. Though I do want to make sure our listening only audience, or really anyone who's viewing this right now, is able to go and support you. Can I ask what social media or what platforms are you most active on that our listening audience can interact with you?
I am definitely the most active on Facebook and Instagram. I'm just like, I have like 1 foot into the Threads wading pool. I'm not really in the Twitter wading pool anymore. But the easiest way to find the links for all of my stuff, including my completely desolate TikTok page, is just going to my website, which is jenniferannegordon.com. That has links to everything but Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, if you're like really interested in Lord Tubby, that gets some extra stuff. But if you're also interested in, no, I guess they're both equal. I was like, my neuroses, then Facebook. But I feel like maybe they're equal.
Just go follow all of them.
Seriously.
Yeah, just follow all of them. You never know when I'm just going to be like, you know what needs to happen on TikTok now? Lord Tubby and me singing Getting to Know You from The King and I.
Right?
Please.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm like, why haven't I done that? An exclusive, showing my little dog paw tattoo at the same time. Oh, I know. Like, so cute. So I'm not doing, so people who are just listening, I'm no longer doing dog paws with my own hands as if they were paws. I am showing the fact that I have a dog paw tattooed on the other side of my dog paw hands.
Oh, well.
Oh, I feel like we jumped the shark there.
No, this
No.
is wonderful.
Well, Trey, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Trey.
Oh, thank you. And Trey, thank you so much for co-hosting.
Oh my God, it's the best trifecta ever.
I think so.
Oh my God. Now I'm like, can I be part of the show forever? No, don't be a crazy person. Don't take Huckleberry's job. I'll be in the cat bed next week.
We'll do a live stream from the cat bed.
Like just you pan over. But I'm still doing dog paws.
God.
All right.
But seriously, thank you so much for being on. Please go follow Jennifer on her journey as she continues being a phenomenal author. Please go support her her co-host Allison on her her new book coming out.
Book comes out tomorrow.
So please go support her. And
that's Allison Martine Hubbard. Allison Hubbard. Her social media is a fictional Hubbard. Okay, sorry. She's going to be like, why are you shouting me out? But
tell us the name of the book again.
Ranchers Take Manhattan.
Okay, good. There we go. A proper plug.
As we close this episode out, this episode, along with probably every other episode, will be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates, announcements, and more, follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thanks, everybody. And if you also want to be part of the Trifecta, congratulations, you now are. Have a great day.
Bye, Trey.
Bye, Trey.